Imagine the dead of winter in a frozen forest, where the wind howls like a starving beast, and you're alone, hearing footsteps crunching closer in the snow. But when you turn, there's nothing there, just an endless hunger gnawing at your soul. What if the scariest monster isn't some slimy alien or undead zombie, but something born from our own desperation, a creature that turns people into cannibals and grows bigger with every bite? Stick around as we unpack the Wendigo legend from Algonquian folklore, from its bone-chilling origins to how it's still creeping into our nightmares today. You'll never look at a harsh winter the same way. Let's kick this off by going back to where it all started, deep in the oral traditions of indigenous peoples like the Ojibwe, Cree, and Innu, who roamed the vast, icy landscapes of North America long before anyone else showed up. These stories weren't just campfire tales to pass the time. They were lessons wrapped in terror, meant to keep folks in line during those brutal months when food ran out and the cold bit deep. Picture a group huddled around a fire, the elders leaning in, voices low, describing the spirit that embodied the worst of winter, starvation that drives you mad, pushing you to do the unthinkable just to survive. The Wendigo isn't your typical myth hero or god. It's a warning sign flashing bright red about what happens when greed or necessity strips away your humanity. In these tales, it's not born from some epic battle or divine spark. It's what a person becomes when they cross that line, eating human flesh to stay alive in a famine. And once you do, boom, you're cursed forever, turning into this insatiable monster that craves more and more. It's like the ultimate metaphor for losing control, where survival turns into something twisted and evil. Tribes pass these stories down generation after generation, using them to teach kids about sharing resources, sticking together, and not letting selfishness take over, especially when times get tough. Think about it. In a world where winters could wipe out entire communities, the Wendigo was that boogeyman reminding everyone that isolation and hoarding could doom you all. One classic story from the Ojibwe tells of a hunter who gets lost in a blizzard, his family starving back home. He finds a frozen body and, in a moment of pure desperation, takes a bite. At first, it saves him, but then the change hits. His body stretches tall, his skin turns gray and tight, and suddenly he's not human anymore, just a hollow shell driven by hunger. He returns to his village not as a savior, but as a predator, picking off his own people one by one until a shaman steps in to end it. Stories like this weren't rare. They were tools to build community, showing how one bad choice could ripple out and destroy everything. But here's where it gets real creepy. The first sightings weren't just stories. They bled into history. That 1636 report from Paul Lejeune, he was chilling with the Montagne, now Innu, and they straight up told him about Achin devouring folks nearby. Lejeune dismissed it as devil worship, but it scared him enough to write home about it. Jump to the 1800s, and cases stack up. Swift Runner's 1879 rampage in Alberta. He walked 25 miles to a trading post after killing his family, looking well-fed in a starving season. At trial, he swore the Wataiko made him do it, describing dreams where a voice urged him to eat. Hanged that year, but his story spread like wildfire, with newspapers calling it Wendigo Mania. Then Jack Fiddler in 1907. This guy was a respected shaman, killing 14 Wendigos over his life to protect his people. When arrested for offing his brother's daughter-in-law, who was showing signs like gnawing her lips bloody, he escaped and hanged himself rather than face white man's justice. His brother died in jail from TB. These weren't isolated. A 1920 study by anthropologist Irving Hollowell documented dozens of similar incidents among the Ojibwe, where Wetiko sickness hit during famines, with symptoms like depression turning to violent cravings. The big problem? This legend wasn't just scaring kids. It was explaining, and sometimes justifying, real breakdowns in harsh times. Imagine your village cut off by snow, bellies empty for weeks. One guy snaps, attacks another for food. Is it madness or the spirit? The challenge was telling the difference, and shamans like Fiddler bore that weight, risking their lives to cure it. But colonialism made it worse. Forced relocations, stolen lands, banned ceremonies, all ramping up desperation. Stats from Indian Affairs records show famine deaths spiking in the late 1800s, correlating with more Wendigo reports. It turned a cultural safeguard into a cycle of tragedy, where believers clashed with outsiders who saw it as savagery. Then there's Jack Fiddler, an Aji Cree shaman around 1907 in northern Ontario. He and his brother Joseph killed over a dozen people they believed were turning into Wendigos, including Joseph's daughter-in-law, to stop the spread. Jack saw it as his duty. Shamans were the frontline defense against these spirits, but the Canadian authorities arrested them, calling it murder. Jack took his own life in custody, and Joseph died in prison. These real-life events weren't just tragedies. They showed how deeply the belief ran in these communities, where the Wendigo wasn't abstract. It was a tangible threat that demanded action. It's heartbreaking when you think about it, how colonial laws clashed with indigenous ways, turning protectors into criminals. Diving deeper into what this thing looks like because, man, the descriptions are nightmare fuel. Traditional lore paints the Wendigo as this gaunt, skeletal figure, all skin and bones from never getting full, no matter how much it eats. Its flesh is ashen gray, stretched so thin over jutting ribs and limbs that it looks like it could tear at any second. The mouth is a mess, lips chewed off or missing entirely from gnawing on itself in hunger fits, and teeth yellowed, sharp like fangs ready to rip into anything. Eyes? Sunken deep or glowing like embers in the dark, piercing through blizzards to spot prey miles away. Some stories add frostbite-blackened fingers and toes, or a stench of rotting meat that hits you before you even see it, like death walking. But size is where it gets wild. Legends say it starts human-sized but grows with every victim, towering up to 15 feet or more, its shadow swallowing trees in the forest. It might have antlers like a deer, or pointed ears and fur in patches, making it blend into the wilderness like a twisted part of nature itself. Claws sharp as knives, speed that lets it dart through deep snow without sinking, and senses cranked up to superhuman levels. Sharp eyesight to track footprints, hearing that catches whispers on the wind, and a nose that smells fear from afar. In some Cree versions, it's more spirit than body, invisible until it possesses you. But when it manifests, it's this hulking beast that freezes the air around it, leaving ice in its wake. One anecdote from Innu folklore describes a Wendigo bursting into a camp, its roar like cracking ice, scooping up a warrior in one claw and devouring him whole while the others flee. But it's not just brute force, it's smart, mimicking voices of loved ones to lure you out into the cold, or waiting patiently for starvation to weaken you first. That's the terror. It's not a dumb monster. It's calculated, using the land's harshness against you. And destroying one? Not easy. Bullets from silver, steel, or iron might work, but often you need a shaman to cut out its icy heart and burn it, or perform rituals to banish the spirit. Otherwise, it just regenerates, hungrier than before. Names vary across tribes, which makes sense given how spread out these groups were. For the Ojibwe, it's Wendigo, rolling off the tongue like a cold wind. Cree folks say Wetiko, emphasizing that guttural hunger. Niskapi call it Wetiko, short and sharp, while Innu might use Shinu, which has a similar vibe, but with regional twists. These aren't just labels. They carry the weight of language, with roots possibly tying back to Proto-Algonquian words meaning something like owl or cannibal monster. Owls, by the way, were seen as omens of death in some cultures, so that connection fits the eerie feel. Even outside Algonquian tribes, parallels pop up, like the Athabascan Wechuge, which is also a cannibal spirit, but might focus more on greed than straight-up starvation. It's cool how these myths overlap, showing shared fears across indigenous nations. Winter's bite, the pull of taboo acts, the need for balance. One story from the East compares the Shinu to a giant made of ice, who melts when confronted with kindness, adding a layer of redemption that's rare in Wendigo tales. But no matter the name, it's always about that core idea. Excess destroys, and once you start down that path, there's no coming back whole. Now, let's talk about how it operates, because the Wendigo's modus operandi is what really amps up the fear factor. It haunts the northern woods and lakes from Canada down to the northern US, thriving in those endless winters where blizzards bury everything and food vanishes. It's not random. It targets the isolated, the greedy, or the starving, whispering temptations until they crack. Sometimes it's a physical beast stalking you, silent as snow falling, ambushing from behind trees or under ice. Other times, it's a spirit that bites or dreams its way into your mind, possessing you slowly, first with cravings, then full-blown madness. The transformation is gruesome. You feel an itch in your gut that turns to fire, your body elongating, skin splitting, until you're no longer you. And the hunger? Insatiable. You eat, but it never fills the void. It just makes you bigger, more ravenous. Legends warn that anyone who resorts to cannibalism invites this curse, turning the act into a virus that spreads if not stopped. In one Ojibwe account, a family trapped in a cabin starts eyeing each other as the food runs out. One gives in, and soon the Wendigo takes over, forcing the survivors to flee or fight. Shamans played hero here, using medicine bundles, chants, or even dances to exorcise the spirit. But if it was too far gone, they'd have to kill the host and destroy the heart to free the soul. It's brutal, but it underscores the myth's message. Community's your shield against this lone wolf evil. And in real terms, these stories probably helped prevent panic during famines, encouraging sharing over hoarding. But here's where the problem rears its ugly head. The Wendigo isn't just an old story gathering dust. It's a challenge that echoes through history and right into our lives, showing how easy it is for humanity to slip into monstrosity when pushed. Think about those harsh winters where tribes face starvation year after year. The legend was born from real survival horror, where one wrong move could mean eating your neighbor or dying. The challenge? How do you keep your moral compass when your stomach's screaming? It's that age-old battle between self and society, where greed wins if you're not careful. Colonialism amped this up, disrupting traditional ways and forcing more desperation. Cases like Swift Runner weren't isolated. They were symptoms of a world turned upside down, where myths collided with reality and people paid the price. Even Wendigo Psychosis became a thing in the 1900s, where docs diagnosed indigenous folks with this culture-bound syndrome of cannibal urges. But was it real, or just outsiders misunderstanding trauma? Modern experts say it's sketchy, lacking evidence, and it risks stereotyping Native experiences. The real problem is how the legend got co-opted, turning a profound teaching tool into a sideshow for Western curiosity. Exploration of this takes us into how societies handle taboo. Cannibalism's the ultimate no-no, but in extremes, it happens. Stats from historical famines show it pops up everywhere, from the Donner Party to Siberian winters, but in Algonquian culture, it's spiritualized as a curse. Developing the myth, tribes adapted it to new threats, like how some now use Wendigo to bash capitalism's endless consumption. Activist Winona Laduk calls it Wendigo economics, where corporations devour resources like the monster devours flesh, leaving destruction behind. It's a smart evolution, keeping the legend relevant in fights against pipelines or climate change. Diving deeper, pop culture snatched the Wendigo and ran with it, often mangling the meaning. Theodore Roosevelt's 1893 book, The Wilderness Hunter, drops a goblin tale of a bear-like beast-stalking hunters. Fans argue it's a Wendigo nod. Algernon Blackwood's 1910 novella paints it as a wind spirit driving men insane in the bush, influencing Lovecraft's cosmic horrors. Fast forward, Stephen King's Pet Sematary, 1983, uses it as an ancient evil possessing the land, tying into Resurrection Gone Wrong. Margaret Atwood's 1995 lectures dissect it as a symbol of Canada's malevolent north, cold and consuming. In comics, Marvel's Wendigo debuted in 1973 as a Hulk foe, a cursed Canadian turning beastly after cannibalism. Antlers, fur, the works. Video games amp it. Until Dawn, 2015, has them as skinny, screeching horrors on a mountain, but the 2025 movie remake twists them as time loop victims, blending trauma with folklore for fresh scares. Fallout 76 mutates them in irradiated woods, while The Witcher 3 echoes with similar fiends. Films get creative too. Ravenous, 1999, uses it as a metaphor for manifest destiny's hunger, with cannibals gaining strength from eating foes. Antlers, 2021, produced by Guillermo del Toro, brings it to a small town, blending horror with family trauma, showing the creature as a deer-headed beast born from abuse and poverty. But indigenous creators push back. Louise Erdrich's poem, Wendigo, flips it, with a girl freeing a possessed man through courage, and her novel, The Roundhouse, uses it to explore justice in Native communities versus U.S. law. The climax comes in realizing the Wendigo's true power. It's not the physical monster that scares us most, but what it represents. That inner beast we all have, waiting for a crack to emerge. In one gripping legend, a young warrior faces a Wendigo that's possessed his brother, towering and roaring in the storm. He doesn't fight with weapons. He uses words, reminding the creature of their shared humanity, melting its icy heart until the spirit flees. It's that moment of confrontation where empathy wins over violence, highlighting the myth's core lesson. Balance and connection beat isolation every time. Summing it up, the Wendigos, a timeless terror, evolving from winter warnings to critiques of modern excess, reminding us to hold onto our humanity no matter what. It's more than a monster, it's a mirror. Wrapping this chunk, the Wendigo's grip tightens as we see it's not frozen in the past. It's adapting, mirroring our modern hungers for more, whether it's resources or power. Stay tuned, there's more to uncover. If this is hitting home, smash subscribe for the chills.